Hello, you prosperous porcines. My name is TB Skyen, and here's an interesting one. I got an email a couple of days ago from someone who works as a video producer at Riot Games, and they gave me some nice compliments on my animation breakdown videos, saying, in their words, that it's nice that someone, takes the time to sit down and try and appreciate and really see all of the work and all of the little details and all the little flourishes and the stuff that they try to communicate with those pieces of animation. As they put it, it's nice that someone noticed. And that, of course, is also a very nice compliment from me because, well, when I do these animation breakdowns, I rely on my own, knowledge, experience, and expertise and interpretation in order to try and figure out what I want to say about them. In other words, I talk out of my ass most of the time, and it's nice to know that at least occasionally, when I'm talking out of my ass, I am talking facts out of my ass. That, that I'm not blatantly giving people misinformation, but that I actually have some reason to believe that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to these things, is a nice antidote to the imposter syndrome that is a constant companion in my life. So that was nice. The producer in question then went on to suggest that I take a look at what we're looking at right now, the 2019 Lunar Revel skins teaser. Which is something that they put out recently, in which this video producer had apparently been involved in the creation of. And they made the argument that it's a very different kind of animation than the big, full-featured, Awaken, The Climb, A New Dawn animated shorts. It's very different. The beast, it's working under different circumstances, and therefore there are different accomplishments to talk about. And I don't disagree with that at all. I think actually that's very correct, that there is some interesting stuff to talk about when it comes to the limitations of this kind of animation versus some big production like the ones that we usually talk about. And yet I was hesitant because, as you know, if you followed my channel for a while, I am that guy, and I'm going to be that guy right now and tell you that this is an advertisement. And it's an advertisement not just in the sense that every piece of media that Riot puts out for their video games, whether it's The Awaken, whether it's The Climb or A New Dawn, are advertisement for League of Legends, the IP. This is an advertisement for a very specific set of products, i.e. the 2019 Lunar Revel skins. The whole point and purpose of this short is to get you to reach into your wallet, pull out your credit card, and buy some Riot points so that you can get these skins. The whole point and purpose is to show you how cool and how fun and how exciting it is to play as Lunar Revel skins, and therefore shouldn't you spend some of your money on that. I have what you may call a strained relationship with Riot's upper management these days, and indeed for quite a long time now. I have a lot of friends who work at Riot. I generally adore the work that rank-and-file Rioters put out. Their creative teams are passionate, they're extremely good at their job, and I love appreciating the things that they do. But I felt iffy. I felt iffy about just doing an uncritical kind of, hey, look at all this cool stuff that's going on here, video about an advertisement for a product that is on sale now. So that's why we're doing this lengthy preamble where I tell you that this is an advertisement. It's an advertisement for a very specific product. It's trying to manipulate you into purchasing that product, and I don't think you should. The skins are really nice. The animation that's going into the skins teaser is really nice. But my compliments to the technical accomplishment of these things is not an endorsement of the product itself because, in my opinion, Riot's upper management are hypocrites and cowards who are doing a terrible job of managing their company ethically. And I know it's a complete bummer and it's annoying to have to listen to that kind of stuff as a preamble to a video when you just want to hear about the animation, but I am that guy. And I don't really have any other choice but to be that guy. Anyway, that's done now. Let's talk about the animation itself, and specifically, what I want to talk about is the discipline of rigging, which is really, really important in animation, but which is often, I think, under-discussed. Now, the best way, I think, to explain what rigging is, and I'm not an expert, I want to be clear about that up front, but I can give you the basics. Rigging is the process of taking a 3D model and turning it into a 3D actor, right? You can think of it like if you had a toy, a plastic toy, that is completely molded out of one piece of plastic. Like, it's one big solid piece of plastic. It has no joints, it has no elbows, like you can't move the arms around, nothing rotates, nothing moves around on it at all. That's what a 3D model is like before a rigger has turned it into a 3D actor. And this is not official terminology, like it's just a way to explain it. The rigger's job is to take the 3D model and convert it into, and give it all the little levers and all the little pull points and all the little articulation points that the animator can then use to turn, to make the thing emote, to make it act, to make it do things, to communicate a story. And on very large, big-budget animation productions like your Disney Studios, your Pixar, what you'll often have is a specialized rigger, someone whose job it is specifically to create the character models that are necessary, who works with VFX artists and works with the animators and the director and stuff like that to create a model that can do the things that the animators and directors needs it to be able to do to tell the story that they want to tell. In smaller budget animation productions and smaller studios, oftentimes you'll get that the rigger and the animator might be the same person, just because, you know, budgets being what budgets are. And I don't know how exactly that works at Riot Games, but we'll talk a little bit about that as we talk about the animation. And the reason why I bring up the discipline of rigging is that when you have a bad animation rig or a limited animation rig, that really puts a damper on what the animator can do. Like, a good animator can animate anything. They can make a bar of soap look lifelike. Like, they can do anything. But the rig puts a hard limit on exactly how an animator can express themselves. Like, if the rig doesn't have any... Like, a lot of older League of Legends rigs have absolutely no control points on the face. Like, they can't... Maybe they can replace the texture so that the model blinks or something like that, but they can't actually make it emote. They can't change the lip shape. They can't change, like, make the jaw move. They can't, you know, make the eyes do any kinds of expressions or anything because it's an old model and the rig doesn't support that kind of motion. The newer models that Riot have been using for their characters and their champions have a much higher quality, which is why Riot have become able to produce shorts like this one. Is because their rigs support it. Like, Morgana's current rig could not do the kinds of complicated motion that you're seeing in Vayne and Sejuani in this particular short here. It simply would not be able to do the kinds of articulations that the fingers need to do. It wouldn't have legs because Morgana's rig, as far as I know, doesn't have legs. It just has a skirt. And that's credit to the animators at Riot that they have created rigs that are useful both in-game, because, like, those are two very different things. Like, the kinds of things that a model needs to be able to do in-game, where the perspective is always top-down and the animation needs to be clearly communicated from the top-down, is different from the kinds of animation that you need to do in order to create a character short, like, for instance, this one, or if you think of the Akali short, when her rework was first released, where they did the whole thing where she's, like, sitting in the Kinku Monastery and she's having a confrontation with Shen, and there's some character acting going on there, and then she runs out. Like, all of that requires a very versatile piece of rigging. It requires a very versatile model. And so one of the things I wanted to bring up in relation to this animated short is credit to the riggers, like credit to the people who create the rigs and who create the character models, that they have been able to make animation rigs that are subtle and that are articulate and useful enough that you can make a short like this at all. In order for the animation in here to be even possible, a lot of people do a lot of work that we don't really get to see in order to make these rigs be able to do stuff like that little expression on Silas's face right there. Like, you can see how the eyebrows slightly move a little bit, and like the eyes narrow a little bit, and as he turns his head around and stuff like that. All of that happens because a rigger at some point took the time to make sure that the model could do those things, took the time to make sure that the model was capable of expressing in those ways. And that's just one of the things I want to recognize here, that the work of riggers is important in animation, and that the work of animation riggers in League of Legends is a huge part of why League of Legends has the character expression that it does in its animation. It's a huge part of why the game is even capable of looking like this at all. So shoutouts to them. And now let's have a look at the animation itself. And one of the first things, like one of the best things about this piece of animation, of course, is the pig. Because of the way it moves. Because of this adorable little chunky thing. And the thing I want you to notice is, and here we come back to rigging again, notice how the pig is jumping up. You can see this curve in the spine as it's kind of throwing its rump up into the air because it's just so happy. And see how that's contrasted. You get this curve that goes this way as it's up in the air and it's coming down, and then as it lands, boom, it transforms so that the curve is, you know, convex versus concave. You can see how the curve transforms, and that's a lot of the reason why it has that wonderful bouncy motion that it does, is because the animator is doing a great job of using these curves and curvatures. And you can see that curvature shifting all the time, right? As it's going up, the curvature is going up, and then as it shifts to go down, the curvature goes down and up and down, and that's what gives the pig that really bouncy, lovely, cute, adorable, you know, fluffy sack of water or water balloon effect to it. which is a huge part of the appeal of the character, is that it is so fluid and so kind of shuffly and kind of stumbles around like a newborn puppy. That's what makes it so lovable and adorable. That, and of course the big nice fat face. And again, in order for the pig to be able to do this at all, a rigger has to make it able to do those things. A rigger has to tell the model to be able to move in those ways. And what you get when you look at especially older video games, like from the early days of 3D animation in video games, you would get these hilarious glitches and bugs where, like, a character would try to do something, like the animation would try to do something, and then some kind of math would go wrong in the rig, or some little thing would get out of place that wasn't supposed to, and you'd get these hilarious glitches where, like, the character's entire arm becomes, like, 4 miles long, and just kind of extends forever, and you get this glitchy behavior where the surfaces of the arm doesn't seem to know where they want to be, and they kind of glitch through it themselves, or they twist in weird ways, and you get these hilarious animation glitches, and you can see that even as recently as Assassin's Creed Unity. Like, I think one of the problems that game had was that the rigs were just not correctly produced, and so sometimes the models would do crazy things that they weren't supposed to do. And that's, in the importance of rigging. And then the character animator can do, and I just love the little slide. Like that right there, what the pig is doing. Right? Bounce, bounce, fall on the face, and then slide across the floor. That's such a good part of the appeal. Like, because you could have easily just made it stop, right? You could have just made it bounce, splat, and then kind of stop there and just lie there. But then to slide across, you get this Bambi on ice kind of appeal to it. That just makes it because it's so kind of hapless and sort of happy and carefree. That's part of what makes it so adorable and likable instantly. It's because it's got those puppy-like movements to it, where it's like only halfway in control of most of its legs at any given time. Anyway, that's enough about the pig for now. Let's talk about Vayne for a sec. Because again, even though she doesn't do a lot in this particular shot, as you can see, like, mostly she's just there to be the center of the image. Like, the reason why Vayne is standing so still right now is that so we will notice the motion of Sejuani coming in from behind, because Vayne is highlighted here. Like, she's got all the light on her, she's at the center of the frame, and the entire frame in the frame is framing her, so that she starts out as the center of attention. So if she was moving and doing stuff all the time when Sejuani comes into the shot, then we would be distracted by Vayne, and we wouldn't notice Sejuani. So a little bit of basic filmmaking here about using motion to guide the eyes of the viewer. And just in case the viewer at this point still hasn't noticed Sejuani, here's number 2, a little basic filmmaking trick. If you want the audience to notice something, make a character in the shot notice something. And here, Vayne notices Sejuani coming in, turns around to face her, and so we definitely make sure for damn certain that we look at Sejuani, and that's a little piece of misdirection as well, because as Vayne looks away to Sejuani, and as we have our attention directed at Sejuani, we don't immediately notice the pig bouncing into the frame. And that's a good way to make the audience sympathize with the characters, or rather, to understand the character's perspective. Why doesn't Vayne notice that the pig is coming to steal the ticket or the thing, whatever the heck this is? I wish I knew more about Chinese folklore, then I could actually interpret a little bit more about the storyline that's supposed to be being communicated here. I don't really know. I know pigs are supposed to be lucky. That's about all. But because Vayne's attention is distracted, she distracts our attention over to Sejuani, who's like, the whole point of bringing Sejuani into the scene is to distract us, so that when the pig snatches the ticket, it's a surprise to all of us, especially to Vayne. And like, it's not like nobody could ever possibly have seen the pig coming because the filmmaking is so great, but just these little subtle directions of attention that help us to understand why Vayne reacts the way she does. Like, why is she surprised? Well, because we know she was distracted in the same way that we were kind of distracted a little bit by the way that the framing and the filming, placed the whole scene. And I also really like the weight relationship that's being established here, because in God of War 2018 PS4 God of War, I've been playing that on stream every Saturday at 8 p.m. Central European Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, in case you want to tune in. And one of the things that happens early on in that game is that Kratos cuts down a tree. This is not spoilers at all, by the way, because that's... he cuts down a tree, and then one of the things he does is this massive tree trunk, he just kind of picks it up with one hand and drags it around and treats it like it's a piece of cardboard, like he's moving it around like it weighs nothing, which is a great way to demonstrate just how strong Kratos is. And that's also one of the things that you do a lot in animation, and just in filmmaking in general, but certainly in animation, is if you want to establish a character's relative strength or an object's relative weight, make it interact with something or someone. And as you can see here, the drum that Sejuani is carrying around here, why does the drum seem to be heavy? Well, because Sejuani moves like this as she carries it into shot. And I really love, like, she's got this slightly, like, bow-legged a little bit, sort of, she's leaning back really, you can kind of see how she's almost kind of diagonal in the shot. She's leaning back so hard to compensate for the weight of the drum, and you can see as it kind of, you can see how it moves down at the beginning of the shot, and you can kind of see how her entire body, she has to follow that, shift her center of gravity lower, bends her legs to support it, so that she can kind of hoist it up back again. And that's just, like, it's just really well observed character animation. I really like how that was done. And speaking of rigging, Sejuani's hand is here, her shoulder is over there. I think they stretched her arm a little bit more than it was supposed to so she could grip the drum on the other side there and keep her posing the way it is. And that's something that you often have to do with 3D animation. Sometimes you just have to hack things a little bit. So you can find all kinds of situations, and that's something, if you think of a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ or indeed Overwatch, a lot of the highlight animations, like the before you get the play of the game and the thing, and the little character animation that happens there, they use a lot of character deformation. Like, they really stretch the character out in different ways in order to really heighten the perspective or to make the poses look cooler and stuff like that. There's a lot of deformation goes on there that you don't really notice. And while I can't be 100% sure, I think they did something similar here. Like, they want to make sure that, because we know that Sejuani is steadying the weight of the drum, right? But we don't want the drum to obscure her entire form by having her shifted around more. We stretch her arm just a little bit more than it's technically supposed to be stretched here, in order to get her to carry the drum and sort of stabilize it there to complete the action when, as the pig then finally snatches the ticket out of Vane's hand, or whatever the heck this thing is. I don't know what that card is supposed to be. Again, don't know anything about Chinese folklore. Oh, by the way, lovely little couple of bits of Easter egg foreshadowing. Vane's arbalest or crossbow or whatever it's supposed to be in her Chinese skin is hanging on the wall right there. And Sejuani's firecracker whip is hanging right here, which I thought was there's just some nice little details, like that their gear is just kind of hanging around the apartment while also functioning as a set decoration. Just a lovely little detail. But yeah, I really just, like, absent anything else, I just like the weight and movement of, like, that little dip down, like, oh, the weight is getting away from me. That little dip down, whoop, supported with the hips, supported with the knees, get it back up like that. It's just a really good motion. Like, it's just good. It's just really well-crafted character animation that works. And again, I think Sejuani is a somewhat older character model. Like, I don't know if the Lunar Revel skins come with entirely new rigging. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they come with completely redone character models. Sometimes the skins don't. I don't know if that's the case for this one, but like, I know Sejuani's rework is fairly old at this point. And so it's just like, the older a character model is, the more impressive to me it is, generally, that they're able to animate it with smoothness. Also, the facial animation on Vayne, we didn't talk about that. And we're going to stay on this shot for a while, by the way. Like, that little lift of the eyebrow? Just that little lift right there. It's such a good expression. You can see Sejuani comes into shot, and then she notices her, lifts the eyebrow a little bit, and that kind of, you can see how that little lift of the eyebrow kind of pulls the head just a little bit. The head kind of swivels with that motion, and then that leads into her turning around to take a look at what the heck Vayne is doing, what the heck Sejuani is doing, and that's just, like, that little subtle move there is something I really like in character animation, when they use that little subtle motion in the face to kind of set up the body movement that comes after. You get that physical representation of noticing something that also happens with her eyes. Let's see. And that little subtle smile she gives, right? As Sejuani comes into shot, she's hoisting it up. She's going, hey, like, again, that's good character interaction because it tells us something about the relationship between these two people. That when Sejuani comes into shot struggling to carry a thing, Vayne is like, oh, hey, I'm happy to see you. Like, and again, this is not really crucial to the short. It's not really that important, but it's just, it gives a little texture. Like, it feels like there's a relationship between these two people, which makes the scene feel nicer. At least to me, anyway. It's just a nice little detail. I also like the way that the paper slip, whatever the heck this thing is, the way it's moving. Right? You see how it, as her hand comes down, it kind of twists down, bounces up a little bit, and then lump. I also like the pig's movement here, because you see how it enters the shot, right? And then jump, and then here, because we need to notice that the pig has stolen the tick. Like, it shouldn't be like a phew, and you missed it kind of moment, but we need to really see the motion. You can kind of see how it kind of pauses almost. You can see how here, under the belly, you can see how it arcs, this perfect arcing curve over, and much like a roller coaster, it seems to stop just a little bit in midair, stops a little bit at the top, and then gravity kicks in, which is like a Looney Tunes kind of trick. Like, it's that kind of gravity is optional animation that it's just, again, is part of the appeal of the character that it makes it look so cartoon-like. Let's see, Sejuani's reaction. Yeah, see, again, good bit of character acting. The pig steals it, and then her reaction is shoulders up, and then notice that the thing has happened. Because, again, she's carrying this heavy thing, so she's trying to have a sudden reaction, but the weight of the thing is holding her so that she can't really do much except just kind of reorient her weight a little bit. And I also like the smile. Again, speaking of the smile on Vayne's face, it's harder to see, but Sejuani responds with a smile of her own, which again establishes that there is a character relationship and that it's an amicable one, it's a happy one. That specifically that these two are girlfriends and they live together and they are also wives, probably. I don't know. I'm making a headcanon right now and you can't stop me. And let's see how Vayne's arm reacts. Yeah, see how the arm starts up here. The pig grabs the ticket, and you can see how her entire arm, and indeed her entire body, kind of reacts to that tug. She's being pulled by the pig grabbing onto it, and then it's only, like, here that the ticket is actually kind of snatched out of her hand, and you can see how because she's been pulled a little bit off balance, she kind of has to readjust herself a little bit, and you can, especially that little movement there, the shoulders settling down. Again, I don't know the limitations of the rig specifically, but that little movement of making the shoulders settle down like that, it's such a lovely it's such a great way to show that tension and relaxation of relaxing into a new stable position. That it's just nice to see. I also love the articulation on the hand that it gets stolen, and she pulls the hand up, and then she pulls it into this little pose. Now, and that's something that you'll notice, like, if you relax your hand, your fingers will usually lay on top of each other, stacked a little bit, so that your pointer finger is the one that's most outwardly, just because that's the way that the hand shapes. And this is a personal thing, but I've always had an appreciation for hand shapes like this one. Because the easy thing to do, and the thing that's tempting to do, is to make the fingers uniform. This is something I've done a lot when I drew, especially when I was learning to draw, was when I needed to draw a hand, just draw all the fingers kind of doing the same pose. Like, exactly the same position. This is a small thing, but I really like it when I see artists who kind of take care to make the hand interesting, in the sense that, like, the fingers have these different levels of being curled up, and the hand is up. This is granular as hell. It's just a little thing that I personally appreciate when it comes to art. I also like this. Again, as we've talked about, the drum is really heavy. So before Sejuani can run forward, right, she has to shift the entire weight of the drum from her front onto her hips. And so she does that, but that also means she has to dip down really low so that she can kind of get the weight under control. And you can see even here she's moving. It's kind of awkward how she's running because she's carrying this heavy thing. And I really like, again, because we don't get much of that running shot. We just get like basically like, what, maybe 40 frames, 40, 50 frames or something like that. And yet it really, like, you really get to sell the feeling of weight of the drum. You can also see how, as she moves, the drum kind of trails her a little bit. You can see how, here. Boom. You can see how she moves up, the drum stays, and then it follows, and it stays up a little bit longer than she does, and then it follows her down in very small, subtle ways. But again, this is the kind of animating weight into characters that can be really, really difficult. It's a really difficult discipline to learn to put weight into characters and to keep that weight consistent across shots. I've seen that like many, many times, even in professional animation, where the weight of a particular object or the weight of a particular motion or the weight of a particular character, like how they move, how they shift with their weight, sometimes animators forget. Like they forgot just the kind of weight that they put into the thing previously, and then they have to, it gets a little inconsistent across the thing. And you don't notice that when the thing is in full motion, of course, because like human eyes tend to be forgiving, but when you look at it frame by frame like this, and again, I love the tension and release right there. See how she's realized that the pig is running off the tick. And I also love the little boink with the glasses falling into place. That's a good comedy detail. But I also love, again, you can see how the weight is tensed. She's about to run forward, and the weight is tensed, but see how her weight tenses exactly as Sejuani lands on that leg, so they tense at the same time. And that gives, I feel like that gives a nice rhythm to the flow of the two of them running forward. And a lot of animation is that. It's you create that tension, then you release that tension, and then the character moves. Like you get a lot of good animation out of that kind of stuff. And then of course the pig, which has just this lovely kind of Fred Astaire step onto the windowsill, doing this Mission Impossible thing where it's staring down its assailants before going, "See you later, gentlemen," or gentle ladies, whatever. And then, whoop, it even gives a little smile before it goes, like, it's, "Well, I guess you've caught me." Guess not. Whee! It's just very appealing. And here, by the way, you can see that deformation again. As the pig swings around, you can see how the legs kind of trail behind. And then here, see how the feet stay in exactly the same position. Like, they don't move at all from their vertical position, but the rest of the pig is moving down, so the leg is stretching behind it, pulling it along like an elastic band. And again, that's Looney Tunes style anime. Like, that's that rubber hosing, like that really rubbery classic style squash and stretch animation that you used to get a lot in 2D animated Disney movies, which is, I feel like it's been downplayed a little bit in modern 3D animation, but which is so effective here in selling just kind of that slippery, wiry, rubber-like zoop motion of the pig flying out of the shot, which is just really nicely done, really lovely and well animated. And which is what makes the pig so fun to look at. And that even continues. I believe this pig is a character model in someone's Recall or something. Like, I think it's a character model that exists in someone's Recall animation or dance animation or something like that, that they've then repurposed into this particular little thing. But here again, you can see, and I really should do a video just appreciating in-game animation in League of Legends. I don't have the camera tool, so I can't really capture footage of it. And here we just get, yeah. I love this pig's bounce. You can see, again, we talked about the curves, right? They're not as articulated, like they're not as expressed in the in-game character model as they are in the little animation short that precedes it. But you can see again here, that curvature, and then this curvature, and then that curvature, right? And then this curvature, and then that curvature, right? You can see that convex, concave, convex, concave. That gives it that lovely bounce to its motion and its movements. It's just good. It's just really good. And again, I don't think I'll spend too much time talking about the in-game animation of the character models as they are shown here in-game, because like I'm more interested in stuff like this. And again, this is a very simple motion. Like, there's not a lot to it, but because we have this situation where, like, he was attacking the pig, and then Sejuani is like, get away from my friend! And then he's like, well, I lost the pig. And then you get that menacing, like, bruh, I guess I'll have to eat you guys instead kind of shot. And what really sells it for me is he turns around, he sees them, and then you see his reaction to seeing them, which is that little motion right there. And it's so subtle. But you can kind of see, if I go a little fast, you can see how the eyes just narrow just a little bit and his head twists. He twists his head just a little bit. Which heightens sort of an expression of distaste on him. And I think his nose tip even moves a little bit, does it? No, I imagined that. Okay. Which heightens an expression of sort of distaste and menace about him. And this is a very subtle character motion that I think works really well. And again, credit to the rigger for making it possible for the animator to do such a good job. And then, I mean, Tahm Kench generally has some of the best animations in the game, but I do love this. Vaboink! I've always loved, like, how they animate the belly on Tahm Kench, because it's so important to the character that he has this big belly that he wants to fill all the time. He's an embodiment of hunger, after all, among other things. But that lift and then that vaboing, which is, again, that's such a Looney Tunes early Disney cartoon thing to do. Like, Black Pete from a lot of the early Disney cartoons, like Mickey's adversary, tends to do that thing a lot, and a lot of the characters do that thing a lot where they kind of pull their gut up to make it sort of hit their chest as bigger, and it's just such a... It's just so well applied. You can see how much he bounces. Lom. Very good. Yeah, more in-game stuff that I'm not that interested in. Like, they're all good animations, in-game animations, but they're not that interesting. But again, here... Like, we've already had one turn in this short where Silas turns around, and then we have another turn right here, where it might be interesting to contrast them a little bit, because where Silas's turn is all about sort of this menacing confrontation of an enemy, this is more like, oh, there you are. And is more of a reconciliation between the two characters, that it finally gives her back the ticket that she was chasing it around for. So, like, it's two very different feelings that are delivered with the same type of motion. Like, it's a demonstration that that kind of turnaround motion can be menacing, but it can also be many other things. Like, for instance, this moment of sort of quiet reconciliation. And again, basic stuff, but see how it's kind of difficult to see because it's so small, but see how the weight shifts from her center of gravity being straight through her body to shifting more over to the right so that she's leaning entirely on her left leg there. Which is just, again, it's, again, I get excited about animation fundamentals, like really basic shit that isn't very exciting at all, but which is just, I love seeing it executed well. And, like, the animators on this stuff, they know how to shift weight around. They're really good at shifting weight around, and that's something that's really valuable in animation. But the thing I really wanted to look at is the pig itself. Like, that little... Because, again, because this is a quiet moment, it's not a comedy moment, it's not like the start of the short, which is all about, like, bouncing energy and fun and comedy and la-la-la, howdy-howdy-ha. This is a much more of a quiet moment of these two characters who have had a minor, tiny little conflict reconciliating over what happened, you know? And so the motion of the pig has to be toned down a lot as well. All the bouncy energy is gone, but that little elastic feeling, right? Like when it lets go of the ticket, you can see how it tenses the jaw up around it to grip it a little bit better, and then a little bit of a wind-up, and then swing that wind-up into poof, spitting the ticket out. And then the ticket itself, which is also quite well animated, really. I think there's a model replacement, maybe, or is it... No, okay, it's the same model, but they just... Ah, that's clever. Okay, so, yeah, okay, I see it. See, I was a little bit unsure about this, because it looks like the ticket is kind of clipping inside the pig model, because this is still the in-game pig model. I think this character model, I think, is a different rig or a different character model than this one. No, it's actually definitely a different one. And so it's not able to do quite the same things. So what you can see here is, this is what I love sometimes about animation, is when animators run up against a limitation and they just kind of fudge it. And here you can see the ticket isn't part of the pig's actual character model. The ticket has been added to the pig, and the animator is doing their very best to move both the animation rig for the pig and the ticket at the same time. But you can also see how the ticket kind of doesn't quite move in exactly the same way as the pig does, because the animator kind of has to eyeball it to make the things move together, because the ticket is actually a completely different model that's kind of being clipped inside the animation model for the pig. And then once it gets spit out, well, that's when you can really see the thing in action, really doing its thing. And again, this is a piece of paper, right? So how do you animate a piece of paper to be expressive? Well, you do it like this. The same way that if you think of something like, when you want to think about how to animate a flat surface to have any kind of character or any kind of appeal, you kind of think of carpet from Aladdin, because that was one of the master classes in making like a flat object behave as though it has some kind of life to it or some kind of personality. And you kind of get that here, where the ticket flies out of the pig's mouth and then twists around like this in the air, and you can see it makes this curve up around, and it's kind of bends itself through the air. It's not being bent by wind currents or anything. It's bending itself, flying up in front, and then it unleashes its power. And you can see here a lovely little, you can see how it kind of swells up across these two frames to then kind of bend in on itself, and then it explodes. And that's all to sell the power of that boom that comes out of the ticket as it explodes and transforms Vayne from her normal, boring, ordinary Lunar Revel Vayne into the more expensive, incredible, amazing, prestige Lunar Vayne. And here's where we see the advertisement in action, because before, she was having a lot of trouble with Silas. He was constantly hitting her, and she couldn't get away from him. Oh no, the trouble. How is she ever going to escape from this situation? Well, the pig has the ticket, and it turns out that ticket transforms her into Super Saiyan Vayne. Or rather, Prestige Vayne, which is much more powerful, and all of a sudden, oh no, Silas is the one in trouble. He can't hit her. She is powered up to Ultra Instinct, and now she's gonna bam, 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 help from Sichuani, throwing out the ultimate. Ba-dum. Wow, shouldn't you definitely splurge with extra money on the Prestige Vayne skin, because it's cooler, and it's more powerful, and it's Super Saiyan Ultra Instinct thing, because you'll be better on the Rift. Like, again, that's where the advertisement comes into force, right? But, I'm not endorsing the product. It's just, this thing really genuinely is full of just good, appealing, interesting, fun character animation. Oh, by the way, we didn't even talk about this backdrop. Like, this is a really gorgeous backdrop, and they use light in really good ways, too. You can see how here, as a firework goes off in the sky, see how it lights up the entire surface, but you can see how the roofs of the houses are not lit up so much, but the little streaks of light, the little outlines of light across the tops of the houses are lit up to be brighter, which retains the silhouette, but also gives the sense that they're being lit up by fireworks, which just works really well. Like, it's just, this is so subtle, and it's not really the big selling point of the animation, but I think this little tableau is really nicely done in the background. Anyway, that was about all I wanted to talk about, and that pig is freaking adorable. This is a perfectly... Riot really have been putting out very good animation content for their skin teasers, and they really have been doing a lot of great work, and that's partly because, as I've mentioned many, many times, because their rigging has gotten so much better, and because they've got a lot of great animators working behind the scenes, and I really do appreciate the craftsmanship and skill that goes into making something like this, even if I don't endorse the product that is advertising. I know, I'm a killjoy, but I have to be, because my brain is like that. Anyway, if you have enjoyed this video, well, you should feel free to hit the subscribe button down below, because there will be more videos like it at some point, definitely. You can also hit the like button, which is useful for me when it comes to dealing with stuff like the YouTube algorithm, which is a miserable hell from which I'm struggling to escape. You can also comment. Comments are nice. I read all of them. I don't respond to most of them because it's too many, but I do read all of them, and I respond to them sometimes. So feel free to do that. I do enjoy, not listening, but reading the stuff that you guys have to say about the stuff I talk about in the videos. Or if you noticed some animation stuff in this thing that I didn't notice, because there's probably plenty, feel free to put that down in the comments as well. I do love seeing the stuff that other people notice that I don't. You can also, if you want to, if you're able to, you can support this channel on Patreon. If you have $1 a month that you don't need or that you can spare, a dollar makes a lot of difference to a content creator like me, or to any other content creator that you might be following. Like, if you have $1 to spare that you can, like, let us have, and it doesn't hurt you or cause you to be in any trouble, then we would very much appreciate it. If you don't want to sign up for, like, a monthly subscription thing, which is what Patreon is, then you can head on over to Ko-fi with the link down in the description, where you can give me a one-time tip to say, hey, that was a nice video. Good job. Here's a little tip to say good job. That I would also very much appreciate that. Of course, if you're not in a position to do any of those things, or if you don't want to, I'm just happy that you've watched the video this far. So, I guess that's about it. I don't think there's anything else I ever do at the end of my videos besides telling you to like, comment, subscribe, and support on Patreon. I think those are the only things. There's nothing else that ever happens at the end of my videos that my audience likes. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Am I forgetting anything? You can tell me down in the comments if I forgot to put something at the end of the video that I usually put at the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching.